Pomp and pageantry filled the streets of Pyongyang on Sunday as the DPRK, or North Korea, celebrated its 70th birthday. But what change was in the air at this year's festivities? And China's most famous billionaire entrepreneur is passing the torch. What's next for Alibaba's Jack Ma? And how will the company fare without him at the helm? Welcome to The Point, live from Beijing. I'm Li Xin. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea turned 70 years old on Sunday. Elaborate celebrations marking the anniversary kicked off last weekend with a concert and the carefully choreographed mass games making a comeback after a 5-year hiatus. But all eyes were on Sunday's highly anticipated military parade. Marching soldiers, rolling tanks and colorful floats flooded Kim Il-sung Square. However, one piece of the parade was notably missing: the intercontinental ballistic missiles, or ICBMs, which had been prominently featured in previous military parades. So what message is the DPRK sending to the world? What new themes stole this year's show instead? And after a year of breakneck diplomacy, how will the DPRK pick up the pace of progress when it comes to denuclearization? Joining me for the discussion in the studio is Dr. Zhao Hai, Research Fellow at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences, and in Boston, Jim Walsh, Senior Research Associate at MIT Security Studies Program. Welcome to both of you, gentlemen. Dr. Zhao, to you first. Now, as I said, the military parade was very telling by choosing not to showcase the advanced ICBMs in this year's parade. What do you think is the message that DPRK leader Kim Jong-un wants to send to the international community, especially to the US and to the ROK? And what about the people of the country who might be watching out for the country's latest military development?
Yeah, this is a very interesting recent development. Looking at the military parade, the mission of ICBM, not only that, but also medium-range missiles, has been noted by the world's media and been reported widely. Also, I think this is a very clear message sending by North Korea to not only the US, but also the international community that wants to continue the current diplomacy. Putting on this, you can call it charm offensive, trying to please the world and calling the world to continue to talk with North Korea on its denuclearization, on the declaration of the end of the end of the Korean War, and also the peaceful development on the Korean Peninsula. For its people, I think this year, because the military is not emphasized, but on the other hand, the workers, the normal people, the livelihood is showcased in the parade. I think it shows to the people that the leadership in North Korea is changing its course toward a more peaceful and economic development trajectory. So I think that's a double message, sending not only to the world, but also to its own people.
The country's ceremonial head of state, the president of the Presidium of the Supreme People's Assembly, Kim Yong-nam, addressed the audience during the celebrations. He told soldiers to be prepared to fight a war, but also be ready to battle for economic development. And the emphasis, as you said, is very much on the economy. So, Dr. Walsh, how significant is this shift for the people of the DPRK, and what concrete steps do you think the DPRK will be willing to take to demonstrate this shift?
Well, you know, I welcome it as signals go. I don't find it a very impressive signal. I have to be honest with you. There is in international relations a concept called costly signaling. And what does that mean? It means when a leader or a country does something, and the more costly it is to the communicator to send that signal, the more credible it should be taken by the audience. But there was nothing, I mean, so you have missiles in a parade. You don't have missiles in a parade. You know, a year later, they could have lots of missiles in a parade. So, you know, it'd be much more impressive if they invited IAEA inspectors in, or if they gave a list of all their nuclear facilities, or, you know, something like that. So, do I welcome it? Yes. I'd rather have that sort of parade than another sort of parade. But I really don't know that it means very much. It only means something if it's followed up by concrete action. And that's going to mean primarily negotiation between the U.S. And the DPRK. Yeah. I will say, though, that certainly it pleased Donald Trump. He tweeted about it. So, you know, mission accomplished as far as the North Korean leadership goes.
Well, understandably, actually, again, but let's just go down the philosophy, the line of the DPRK a little bit further to see what other signals are there. I mentioned the
Sure.
mass games, which last time was taking place in 2013, and last time it was heavily featured Pyongyang's advanced missiles and nuclear program. However, this year, notably again, the games are titled "The Glorious Country" and featured some slogans, however, but again, there are perceivable differences. So, Dr. Zhao, do you think these signals as...
It's the question.
Yes. Let me just finish my question. Do you think these signals are significant?
Yes.
And how important, how costly, let's say, in the words of Dr. Walsh, how costly it is for the DPRK to stage these subtle but numerous hidden signals for the outside world?
Well, I think the U.S. side and the North Korean side are arguing back and forth who should take the first step and whether or not they should take the steps simultaneously. And ROK, the President Moon Jae-in has suggested that they should move simultaneously. However, the U.S. side wanted North Korea to move more, like Jim said, you know, make more costly moves before the U.S. can take further steps. I think at this point, because of the sequencing discussion is stalled, no one wants to take the first step. Therefore, you know, Secretary Pompeo failed to make the last trip by the end of August.
Well, what I really meant was the cultural connotation, maybe the way how things are done differently. In Asia, people tend to be more subtle and send messages and expect the other side would understand it, whereas in the United States, everything is very explicit, right? Dr. Walsh, how do you look at this cultural level of difference in terms of communication between the two sides?
Yeah, I've never found North Korean communications to be that subtle, honestly. I mean, if you read KCNA or in the national media, I would say they're actually the opposite of subtle. They tend to be, compared to most countries' communications, in your face and rather direct and often threatening. So I don't think that's at work here. I do think something that you touched on earlier, and I agree completely with my colleague, by the way, that what we need is both countries acting reciprocally simultaneously. That's the only way you can conduct a negotiation. But to get back to your earlier point, I do see this as part of the general strategy and philosophy that Chairman Kim has outlined. Remember, he had the Byung-Jun policy of nuclear weapons and economic development. And then some time ago, I guess it was more than a year ago, he had a speech in which he said, well, we've sort of accomplished our nuclear goals. Now we're going to focus on the economy. And it makes sense for him to do that, both as a domestic signal and as an international signal. And the main thing that they want is to end sanctions and economic isolation. And so the sort of things that you see at the parade and also the games are another thing that I think the North Koreans think will help be a step in that direction.
Yeah.
So
well, on the
I
other
definitely
hand,
think it's part of a strategy.
Yeah.
The question is whether it's going to come to anything.
Yeah. On the other hand, the DPRK does think that they have sent many signals, they have done some goodwill gestures, and now the ball is in the court of the United States to pick up these gestures and reciprocate. Therefore, I think they're not really doing this by saying, these are the things we have done. They're saying, look, we have done some things, now pick up these signals and reciprocate. Dr. Walsh.
Yes, well, I agree that they have done things. They released the detainees that they were holding. They have suspended missile and nuclear tests. And for its part, the U.S. suspended war games with South Korea. Now, the thing I would say about it, I'd say that's all great. I welcome all those things. They're all reversible. And they're all cheap rather than costly. They can resume testing. Now, they can't get the detainees back. They sort of lost that one. But a lot of these things they can reverse just like the U.S. Can reverse them. And I agree that if the U.S. is insisting that North Korea go first or make further concessions in the absence of an actual negotiation, that's a losing strategy. I don't think the U.S. should be doing that. And I'm afraid what we have in the U.S. is a situation where the leader, President Trump, is very much enthusiastic about this process, and he is surrounded by his national security team who is very cynical about this process. And so in some ways what's happening is the North Koreans are sort of throwing President Trump a bone every once in a while, and he's responding positively on Twitter, and they're trying to keep the process alive, or at least not from disintegrating. But at some point, The two sides have to sit in the room and have a negotiation. We negotiated with Iran for 3 years before we got an agreement. We need sort of that same level of commitment.
Longer than that.
At least a year's worth of negotiation.
Yeah, I must say it's actually
yes.
as long as over a decade if you take the whole process altogether, which means that this could be a long process as well for the DPRK. So you need to have the confidence buildings, you need to have goodwill, you need to have flexibility, and you need to have patience. Dr. Zhao, given these positive, maybe not so costly, but positive, subtle gestures coming out of the DPRK, how much progress, how much hope can we put on the two sides making some small steps to push forward the process that they started in Singapore?
I think 2 points I want to make. First of all, actually North Korea blew up its only nuclear testing site. So I think you can consider that irreversible. And North Korean side think that they have made the concession enough. The U.S. should reciprocate. As Jim already mentioned, you know, the suspension of U.S. And South Korea joint military exercise can be reversed at this point. However, because President Trump has put his own credibility on the line, and he has to, maintain the negotiation process, keep it going. However, I think at this point, again, because of two sides, they don't want to make further concessions simultaneously, and South Korea has to do more to try to bring this, keep it going and make it, keep it alive. So I think the difficulty, maybe, at this point, the ball is really in American court, try to make this work. And the other thing is that because during the Singapore negotiations, probably North Koreans get the impression that President Trump has promised them to make the declaration of the end of the Korean War. So at this point, without giving that concession, North Koreans thinking that they have been betrayed or not giving honest answers from the U.S. side.
So really, we have to watch out what's happening over the next weeks. What the ROK leaders talk with President Trump is going to be on the sidelines of the General Assembly and so on and so forth. But still on the celebrations that we saw over the weekend, China's special envoy Li Jianshu was watching the celebration, and he and Kim watched the procession from a balcony with other senior leaders, and they also locked hands and raised arms at the end of the event. So Dr. Zhao, very briefly, what is the significance of China sending Li to the celebrations, and what kind of role is China looking in there?
Well, China is keeping its tradition alive. I think this is a traditional friendship between China and DPRK, and this kind of performance have been shown for the last decades and even longer than that. So I think there's no surprise over there, and you can expect China will improve its relations with North Korea continuously as long as North Korea is committed to denuclearization and peace and stability on the peninsula.
Okay, we're going to leave it there. Many thanks to Zhao Hai, Research Fellow at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in Beijing, and in Boston, Jim Walsh, Senior Research Associate at the MIT Security Studies Program. You have been watching The Point with me, Liu Xin. We'll take a short break, but when we come back, on his 54th birthday, also China's Teacher's Day, Alibaba's Jack Ma named his successor. How did his English teacher training influence his landmark decision? Stay with me. Alibaba's founder and chairman Jack Ma will hand over the keys to Asia's most valuable company to its chief executive officer Daniel Zhang. The carefully crafted succession plan, which was announced on Ma's 54th birthday on Monday, took 10 years to put together and will unfold slowly over the next 12 months. Ma launched Alibaba.com in 1999 as a business-to-business marketplace with 17 co-founders. The company's business has skyrocketed ever since, catapulting the brand into international recognition and making its founder one of the world's richest men. In 2017, Ma was ranked second in the annual World's Greatest Leaders list by Fortune magazine. Specializing in e-commerce, retail and technology, the company is responsible for billions of dollars in sales, and last year delivered 55 million packages. Alibaba has since moved into cloud computing, digital payments, healthcare, Hollywood movies and investment. So without Ma at the helm, what will be the new Alibaba? Why has the succession plan drawn so much attention, and where will he go? I'm joined in the studio by Chen Xiaowei, co-founder of Wiznut Technology Co Limited, and Victor Gao, Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, September the 10th is Ma's 54th birthday, is also China's Teacher's Day, and on the same day, a letter was released by Jack Ma to the customers, staff and shareholders of Alibaba. The letter says teachers always want their students to exceed them, so the responsible thing for me and the company to do is to let younger, more talented people take over in the leadership so that they can inherit our mission of making it easy to do business everywhere. So first of all, Xiaowei, tell us, what is he doing? Is he stepping aside? Is he retiring? Is he resigning? What is this?
He is, I would use the word back. He's stepping back, or he has announced plans to step back. But this shouldn't come as a surprise. 5 years ago, he already resigned as the company's CEO, and he always said that he wanted to focus on education as a philanthropist. So a year from today, and you know, he couldn't have chosen a better day to announce the retirement plan, because it is a teacher day, and he was a teacher. So a year from today, he will really act as a philanthropist focused on education.
Yeah, Victor, what do you see as the timing here on a Teacher's Day, also his 54th birthday? Some people are saying, why so early? He's still so young. Why does he want to step aside?
Well, I think this is a very much of a landmark event for Jack Ma as well as for Alibaba. Jack Ma has always been a well thought after person, and he has been planning for this for quite some time. And I think his birthday is the Teacher's Day actually, and he also wants to resume his work as a teacher. So I think this is fully understood. As for Alibaba, I think they need to really prepare for the time when Jack Ma is no longer at the helm, and they also need to really come up with new strategy, new dynamism to live up to the expectation, because the sectors they are operating in keep changing, and there are new opportunities and new challenges constantly surfacing on the horizon, and they are not in a position to be complacent. So without Jack Ma really very much involved in the company's management, hopefully the new successor and the new management can do an equally, if not even a better job in navigating through the ever-shifting landscape.
Yeah, I think the market has reacted relatively maturely to this decision, right? The stock market has not fluctuated too much, which also probably means that they have some degree of confidence in a successful succession. And I mentioned Daniel Zhang as Jack Ma's successor. So what do you think of this choice, and is there any surprise in there?
It's actually quite a rational choice. Daniel Zhang has been the company's CEO for the last 13 quarters, more than 3 years. And as Jack Ma said in his resignation letter, or plan to resignation letter, Daniel has taken the company on 13 consecutive quarters of growth. So it does not come as a surprise to the market. Now remember, the stock market hates surprises, and there shouldn't be any surprises. This is not an election process. As in the US election process, Donald Trump was certainly a surprise, but not in a selection process. The market hates surprises. Stock market has rarely seen happy surprises.
Well, the succession seems to have been in the working for the past 10 years. So, Victor, how important is it for Alibaba to have a smooth transition, and what can give us the confidence that the succession will be smooth?
Well, absolutely. The transition will be a major landmark event. However, it will not happen overnight. It will altogether involve 2 years to complete. In the first year, that is from now to 1 year later, Jack Ma will no longer be the chairman, and then for another year he will no longer be a board member. So I think this actually is plenty of time for the company to readjust to the period where Jack Ma is no longer very much involved in the company. And further, I think whether he is with the company or not, I think Jack Ma will still continue to provide his inspiration and possibly guidance whenever it is necessary to his successor and to the future management. So this is quite reassuring. Further, I would say, Jack Ma being such an iconic market leader and well known throughout the world, and constantly meeting with the heads of states, heads of government throughout the world, for example, will continue to serve as a beacon of hope and beacon of inspiration for the company and its successor.
Actually, I want to take on the point that Mr. Gao made about transition. It is not just a transition for Alibaba, it's also a transition for Jack Ma himself. For the last 19 years really since the founding of Alibaba, he has been in the forefront and with his charisma. Signature charisma. But now he has to learn how to step back, and he has to learn to focus on education. Education is not about teaching or even preaching. It's about enabling others to learn, especially the underprivileged others.
Well, I think that's not a surprise. It's not a surprise. He always talked about his years as an English teacher and how he loved to send the elevator down. However, the fact that he chooses to do it at such a young age, right, I think that is the surprise. For instance, we have actually a group of entrepreneurs who are born about the same era. For instance, Jack Ma, and then Ma Huateng, who is founder of Tencent, he's 46, and Robin Li, who is CEO and chairman of Baidu, 49, founder of Xiaomi Incorporated Beijing, he's 48, and Liu Qiangdong, he's 45, he's founder of Jingdong.com. So is it possible that this could be a wave of resignation or similar events started with Jack Ma?
I personally doubt it. I don't see any of the others that you mentioned were likely to resign within a very short period of time. However, I think Chinese entrepreneurs have taken on a lot of burden. They work under a lot of pressure, and also many of them have other dreams, other passions that they wanted to pursue. So it's nothing surprising. I think the key that we wanted to focus here is philanthropy work, charity work that they wanted to focus on, especially Jack Ma after. And this is not something new. For instance, Tencent yesterday started the September 9th Charity Day. And in one day, over 28 million people in China, around China, donated. And with matching donations from companies, including Tencent itself, it raised 1.4 billion yuan. So I want to say that philanthropy or charity is not just a priority for successful entrepreneurs. It's actually the whole nation that's focusing on that, and that's a very good thing to see.
Yeah, well, Dr. Gao, how do you see Jack Ma setting some kind of example for other entrepreneurs in China who have really been going out for decades to build their business empire, but maybe not as much in the philanthropist arena?
Well, first of all, I would say each corporate leader is different, and Jack Ma is quite unique in a sense, and I don't expect other corporate leaders, peers of Jack Ma, will follow suit by giving up their position, for example. Philanthropy, yes, most of them are already very much engaged in philanthropy one way or another. However, I would say that it is very much of an individualistic choice or personal choice as to whether you want to keep working in your position as the top leader of your company or give it up and enable younger leaders to replace you. And for tech company in particular, I would say the competition is really very fierce. And for Jack Ma, as the leader of Alibaba for almost 20 years, I would assume that the pressure on him probably is truly insurmountable. And he has also talked about Bill Gates as his example, and try to retire early enough, for example, so that he can still spend more years to do whatever he personally would choose to do. And this is a good example. However, I would say other corporate giants in China most likely will continue with whatever they are doing until a much later year.
What is Jack Ma's specific plans? Do we have any idea of that? And he also talked about comparing himself to Bill Gates, which you mentioned. Can he actually catch up with Bill in terms of philanthropy?
That remains to be seen, actually. He has already set up a personal foundation, actually with his co-founder of Alibaba, Cai Chongqing, a foundation to do philanthropy work. And now, specifically with this announcement being made on Teachers' Day, he's announced that he wants to focus on education, and that's a very high cause. We in China face a insurmountable challenge of how to educate the children. And again, like I said before, I think it's learning for not only those who somehow will receive the benefits of philanthropy, but also for Jack Ma himself, how to enable others to learn instead of teach. For decades, he's been the teacher, and he's been an idol among Chinese youths, and now he needs to step back.
What kind of loss or is it going to be a loss for China's Chinese voices communicating with the world? I mean, many people remember Jack Ma as the very eloquent speaker who is able to tell jokes, who is able to speak very good English, appear on international media. After he steps back, are we going to see more of this or less of this? Victor?
I hope we'll hear and see more of this.
Yeah, what do you think of his contribution in that regard?
No, even as the chairman of Alibaba, Jack Ma has been very active in involving himself not only in corporate matters of Alibaba, but also in society at large. He has been active with several United Nations agencies, for example, and he has also spared a lot of time in working on public goods, for example, public services. And I think after phasing himself out from the chairmanship and board membership of Alibaba, he probably could have more time to really do whatever he wants. And the personal foundation is one thing, and also I think he can speak more and represent himself or China or whatever group of interest that is interested in more, not only here in China but also on the global stage. So I don't think we will see less of Jack Ma. Most likely we'll see much more of Jack Ma on the global stage.
On this,
personally...
Yeah, I just have very little time left. I want to ask you this question. How can China produce more Jack Ma in the future? On this day of the Teachers' Day, what words of wisdom do you think can be given to teachers around China, very briefly?
Do we really need more Jack Ma? I think one Jack Ma is quite enough. Actually,
well,
too many teachers confuse the audience. What I wanted to add is that I think I personally would love to, and on behalf of all students in China, we would love to hear more than just success theories. How to become success. I think we would love to hear more about how to really educate one to be a good global citizen. I think that's what it takes.
Okay, very thoughtful words to close the show with. Many thanks to Chen Xiaowei, co-founder of Wiznut Technology Co Limited, and Victor Gao, Vice President of the Center for China and Globalization. And that's it for this edition of The Point with me, Li Xin. As always, follow me on Facebook and Twitter using the handle The Point with Alex. Download the application called CGTN to watch the show on your mobile devices, or go to YouTube and look for CGTN The Point. Thanks for watching. You've got The Point.